On this week's Lazy Sunday upload is the irrepressible Camille Paglia. Now what you're about to see is cut from two different videos, the full version of which you can find down below. In those videos she talks about the rise of the transgender movement. Paglia claims that transgenderism is a symptom of cultural collapse that occurs in the late or decadent phases of cultures, and this can be observed throughout history. Now, if you've never heard Paglia speak, you should be warned that she seems to be able to talk continuously without drawing a breath. But don't let that put you off. She speaks with a depth of knowledge and clarity, which is unfortunately all too rare these days. Enjoy.
There is something weird, despite that, about the transgender question, right? There is something going on that's beyond the sort of liberation of fluidity. Something else seems to have happened, where many young people in this country now, there's a percentage increase in the number registering for clinical interventions on transgender questions has increased enormously. There's a certain fashion in schools of some sort, and it's a nerve-wracking business. If you're going to get no platformed in this country at university, you know, Germaine Greer-like, regardless of what one thinks of Germaine Greer, the point is you only have to touch on this question. Ian McEwan, who is completely right on liberal, a novelist, dared to say the slightly wrong thing, and suddenly he kind of has to apologise and is kind of ridiculed and shamed. So I don't want to get you to say anything you don't believe, but I'm interested in it because I want to be for liberation. I'm not going to stop anyone dressing how they will. But there's something weird about lots of young women wanting to be young men and lots of young men wanting to be women. I don't feel as though it's a great step forward myself. Thoughts?
Well, I say in the introduction to my new book, my new collection, my particular transgender rebellion came at a time when there wasn't these ideas in the air, that the moment you are dissatisfied with the limitations of your present gender definition, that there is this enormous mechanism waiting to alter your body, to halt puberty, to slow your puberty down. People, all very well-meaning and very sympathetic, are there to provide surgical intervention and potential, permanent changes in your body with which there's no going back. Okay, for me, a sex change operation opens one door but closes many others. Right? So I personally believe that anyone who collaborates in an intrusion into a developing child's body and mind is guilty of child abuse, a crime against humanity. Okay, because that child is not prepared to make such a decision. Okay, I think that such decisions about sex reassignment surgery must wait when one attains a majority, which would be, it seems to me, a minimum of age 18. I'm very concerned with this because I think that it's become a fashion, okay, that the transgender definition has become a kind of convenient label for young people who may simply feel alienated, okay, culturally for many other reasons, okay. So that in the 1950s they might have become a beatnik, in the 1960s they might have become a hippie and taken mind-expanding drugs, okay. And so today you're encouraged to think that it's an alienation is because you are not totally identifying with your particular inherited gender definition. So I'm very concerned about this. I think that a lot of it, I think that the collaboration of the bureaucratic machinery with it has to do with the assault on masculinity. Okay. Okay. You see, gender doesn't really exist. It's not really polarity. I mean, everything's all about expanding women's rights, but also terminating men. Okay, and defining men out of existence. Masculinity is by definition toxic. Okay, masculinity doesn't exist. And you see, this is the proof of it. Now I began all of my studies. My book Sexual Personae began as a dissertation at Yale graduate school on androgyny. I've always been fascinated, attracted, to the subject of androgyny, and that's what the sexual personae is. I explored it in history, but the more I explored it, I realized that historically the movement toward androgyny occurs in late phases of culture, okay, as a civilization is starting to unravel, okay, and that you can find it again and again and again through history in the Greek art, okay, you can see it happening. All of a sudden, okay, there's a kind of the sculptures of handsome nude young men athletes that used to be very robust, okay, in the archaic period suddenly began to seem like wet noodles, okay, toward the end, okay, and that the people who live in such periods, a late phase of culture, whether it's the Hellenistic era, whether it's the Roman Empire, whether it's the Mauve decade of Oscar Wilde in the 1890s, whether it's Weimar Germany, people who live at such times, okay, feel that they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan, okay, and homosexuality, heterosexuality, so what, anything goes, and so on, all right, but from the perspective of historical distance, okay, you can see that it's a culture that no longer believes in itself, okay, and then what you invariably get are people who are convinced of the power of heroic masculinity, okay, on the edges, whether they're the Vandals and the Huns, okay, or whether they're the barbarians of ISIS, okay, you see them, starting to mass on the outsides of the culture, and that's what we have right now. That there is a tremendous and rather terrifying disconnect between the infatuation with the transgender movement in our own culture and what's going on out there. Okay, and so I mean that's why I'm concerned. I feel it's ominous. Okay, I question whether the transgender choice is indeed genuine in every single case. But what concerns me is when well-meaning adults, believe that they're helping people by making it easier some permanent change in the body from which there is no going back. For example, Brown University, one of the elite Ivy League schools in the United States, put sex reassignment surgery on its student insurance program. Okay, so that it becomes they can get a sex change in college. I thought, oh my Lord, okay, I feel that's evil. Okay, because what it does to young people today facing an uncertain job market. Okay, what it says, people who are questioning their gender while they're at Brown University suddenly feel, well, it's like economically, a better judgment, for me to move now on this rather than to wait till I don't have a job and living in my parents' basement. Okay, so actually, the adult community trying to be understanding, okay, is I think involved in possibly making a permanent change in someone's life that could have tragic consequences. I think, okay, that gender identity has become really almost fascist, okay, and it's to me a very shrunken, miniaturized way of perceiving your position in the world and in the universe. Okay, there was a time when these fine gradations of gender identity. Okay, I'm a male trans doing this with that going move. This is a symptom of decadence. I'm sorry, as Sexual Personae talks about this. That was in fact the inspiration of Sexual Personae was that my overview of history and my noticing, okay, that in late phases, right, you all of a sudden get a proliferation of homosexuality, of sadomasochism, okay, of gender games and impersonations and masks and so on. So I believe we're in a late phase. We're in a late phase of culture. So that the proliferation of cultural identities, the proliferation of all sorts of possibilities is actually a sign that we're on the verge of collapse. Yes, Western culture is in decline. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Okay, in my view, okay, looking at the history of Egypt, of Babylon, okay, of Rome, of Byzantium, okay, and so on. And so what's happening is everyone's so busy, okay, with themselves, okay, with the solipsistic, narcissistic, a sense of who they are in terms of sexual orientation or gender, and this intense gender consciousness, women consciousness at the same time. And meanwhile, is that also racial consciousness or ethnic consciousness as well? I think that I think right now, okay, to me, the real obsessions have to do with gender orientation. Although I think there's been this flare-up, I voted for Obama, okay, but I've been bitterly disappointed. I think we had hoped that he would inaugurate a period of racial harmony, and I think it's actually the situation has become even worse, okay, over the past for recent years with it seems to me overt inflammatory actions by the administration to pit the races against each other in the U.S. So I think there's a lot of damage that needs to be healed. But I think most of the problems, as I perceive them, okay, are, I mean, as I can see them in my students and so on, is that there is a new obsession, okay, with where you are on this wide gender spectrum, okay, and a view of gender that seems to me unrealistic because it is so divorced from any kind of biological referent. I mean, I do believe in biology. I do believe in the cult. I say the first paragraph of Sexual Personae that sexuality is an intricate intersection of nature and culture. But what's happened now is that the way the universities are teaching is nothing but culture, okay? And there's nothing's from biology. It's madness.